Welcome back, everybody, to my newest review. Today, we're going to be talking about a movie called Friendship. Now, this was a movie that was on my radar for a while. I know it premiered at South by Southwest a few months ago, and I was a little. This is a very odd movie to talk about because when I first saw the trailer for this movie, it gave me a vibe of a thriller, but based on who was in it, I was like, "Is this going to be a thriller?" And then when I heard reactions coming out of South by Southwest, people were talking about how this was easily the funniest movie of the year. It was gut busting, laughing, and it was hilarious all the way through. I saw some people that it didn't work for them, and after seeing the movie, I know 100% why. So this is a movie that stars Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd. If you don't know Tim Robinson, he's like this comedian. He has a very, very particular sense of humor. He had a show on, I think he still got the show on Netflix called I Think You Should Leave, which is almost like this sketch comedy show. And I know, yeah, his humor works very well for some and does not hit at all for others. And I'm in the middle of that because I have watched most of his show on Netflix, I Think You Should Leave. And there are certain skits that he had that had me in tears laughing. I was laughing so hard. And then on the other hand, there were certain skits he had on there, nothing. Like it didn't do anything to me. Like even I remember we watched it at work one night, and it was the same for them. Half the skits we were laughing our ass off at, and then there was other skits we were just like nothing. We are like, what happened? So it depends on your sense of humor, and this is a movie that has that very cringe, humor. I know for some people it'll be kind of a hard watch, and it was the same in this movie. There were certain parts in this movie that there was 3 or 4 parts in particular that I laughed pretty hard, like very hard. And there's other parts I chuckled, and then other parts I didn't laugh at all. So if you check this movie out, you might be in the same boat I did, where some of the humor lands and you really laugh, and the other parts you just kind of chuckle here and there. Like there was a guy who was sitting behind me in the theater. He was laughing his ass off. And then I had 2 girls who came in that left like 30, 40 minutes into the movie. So that's what I'm saying. It's going to be a movie that's very, out there. It's not for everybody. Like I said, essentially ask yourself if you're a fan of Tim Robinson. That's the best way to do it. If you've never heard of him, I would check out maybe the Netflix show first, just to see. Because like I said, some of the skits on there were hilarious. They were so hilarious. And then others, nothing. But this movie essentially follows Tim Robinson's character who, just normal typical guy, lives in a neighborhood, and then Paul Rudd moves in. Tim Robinson, he's kind of the awkward guy who's got no friends or anything like that. So one day when he finally does meet Paul Rudd, they strike up this friendship together. And then it's almost like Tim Robinson, becomes obsessed with Paul Rudd. And with that, certain things happen, and then Paul Rudd's like, you know what, I think we had a few fun times together, but I think we're good. So he kind of breaks up the friendship, and it almost makes Tim Robinson spiral, almost like this stalker type sense. It's almost like this movie is a mixture. I've seen the ads where it says "I Love You Man" for sickos, which "I Love You Man's a great movie if you've never seen it. But to me, it was like "I Love You Man" meets American Psycho, maybe without all of the murdering going on. So you have all this stuff that takes place in between, but it's just so awkward. Like, holy crap, it's awkward. And like I said, if you have any kind of anxiety or anything, this is gonna be one of those movies you're like, holy shit, this is very hard to watch. And it's really a very hard movie to talk about because I don't know where somebody's gonna land on the spectrum of this movie. Tim Robinson, of course, pretty much is the funny man all the way through it, and Paul Rudd, who's normally funny, he has to kind of play more of the straight man in this one. But it's like Tim Robinson is almost like he becomes so obsessed with Paul Rudd. It's like, this that guy is losing his job, putting his family in jeopardy, especially his marriage. A particular scene of that, which was how that played out, I thought was hysterical. But it's like he's putting everything on the line to try to stay friends or to get Paul Rudd to stay to notice him and things like that. And it's, yeah, and how it plays out, it just plays out in these just so awkward that you have to laugh moments. This might be the first comedy that I've seen in a long time where through the majority of the movie you just felt very uncomfortable. And I think that that's the point of the movie. but maybe it's because you feel so uncomfortable. That's what makes you laugh even more. So I don't know. Like I said, it all depends on who you are and like what your tastes are. But at the same time, you also feel bad for the guy because you're like, you want this guy to have some kind of friend or some kind of relationship with him, so you feel for him, but you don't really condone all the things he does throughout it. Like he goes some pretty wild, places with this, and so you're you're rooting for him, but at the same time, you're like, dude, just take the hint. It'll be okay. Something else will come along in time. I promise. There's even one particular scene that it's without I'm trying to say this without giving anything away, especially punchlines or jokes or just spoilers in general. But where he goes down in the sewer, and it's almost like it plays out when he loses someone. I'll say that, and it plays out almost for a split second, almost like this horror film. It's like it switches to this horror film real fast, and I think that's on purpose. But it does it in this well, so it throws the tone of the movie off somewhere. You're like, what is this movie? Like I said, it's a very, very hard movie to talk about, but it's almost like someone took one of his sketches from I Think You Should Leave and stretched it into an hour and a half film. And I know that will probably work for some, and it definitely won't work for others. Like I said, the dude behind me, he was eating this movie up. He laughed his ass off the entire way through it. I think there's certain things that Tim Robinson does that works pretty good. Even certain how he says certain things, or how how his delivery of certain lines is what makes stuff so funny. Like there's a couple lines in this movie that the way he delivered them or shouted them, how I say, literally had me. There was one in particular that almost had me in tears laughing because I was laughing pretty good. And I don't think I've laughed this hard at a movie in a long time. I've chuckled and got some pretty good laughs, but there's the 3 or 4 scenes that really got me in this movie really got me. Like they really got me to laugh, and so I have to give it kudos for that. I mean, there's not really much of a story. I mean, other than the fact that, like I said, you're just watching Tim Robinson live his life, and it's almost like this. Yeah, it's one of those slice of life movies. That's what you call them. So it's like you have this, this guy living his life, and stuff happens with Paul Rudd, and then you essentially just follow him after that, like all the stuff that goes on after that, and it just leads to this series of events. That's why I was so curious to see this movie, because I really didn't know what it was. Because, like I said, based on the trailers, I thought it was going to be some kind of like horror thriller, and then people were like, "No, it's just a straight up comedy." And I still get the gist of both, but that's just me. I mean, that's really it. I really don't have a lot to say about this movie. Like I said, it depends on what your taste is, like I've said before. And like I said, I do like Tim Robinson. I didn't know who he was until a friend of mine turned him on to me and showed me some of the skits from I Think You Should Leave. And he really likes him. So I think too, this movie, you'll get a laugh at it depending on the audience you're with. If you have somebody that really loves this style of humor and or just really likes Tim Robinson in general, I think you'll get more out of it, because whoever, laughter is contagious. So if somebody's laughing their ass off at some stuff, I think that'll really work for you. And it's the same with, I might have been laughing some because of the guy laughing behind me in my showing, but because I was curious when I left this movie if I would still think those particular scenes are funny upon rewatch. So I am going to try to test that when I get to see this movie again. I thought about showing it to my friends that I work with, because those guys, they got a very all over sense of humor. So I would be very curious to see what their take on this movie would be. So, but know who you are going in. Like I said, maybe watch his show first. That's on Netflix, called I Think You Should Leave. Kind of get to know Tim Robinson some, just to see if his humor will work for you. And if not, I think they kind of knew going into this. I don't think this movie would be for everybody, but I don't know if I'd rush out to the theater to see it. I would say check it out at home, because especially based on how split a lot of people are. So yeah, I would say check it out at home if you get the chance. I would like to see more from Tim Robinson, like if he's got any more ideas up his sleeve, because I'm sure it'll be in the same vein as this movie, because this is, like I said, this is just his style of humor, so it works perfect for him. So, but anyway, so that's my review for Friendship. Like I said, know who you are going in based on anything that I just said. It's, like I said, it's a very odd movie to talk about. That's why I didn't really have a lot to say because there's not really a lot to say in, for the movie. The movie kind of speaks for itself, and I don't really want to, give away any of the jokes or anything like that. So it's very limited on what I can say. I just wanted to tell everybody to temper their expectations, going in, whether they've seen a trailer or not, because like I said, this movie may work, it may not work for you. So it just all depends on the style of humor that you have. Same with horror, like whatever scares you might not scare somebody else. So it's all subjective, and it's all entirely up to whoever wants to watch this movie. So, but thank you, everybody. That's my review for Friendship. If this is a video you're finding me on, please come check out all my other 2025 reviews and a couple ranking videos that I've done so far for this year. I'll leave a card right up here for all my other reviews for this year. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. If you've seen Friendship and you thought it was funny or not funny at all, please comment below and let me know. Let's talk about it. And as always, thank you all so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one.